This is 5 Live Formula One with Jenny Gow.
Well, good afternoon, good evening, hello and welcome to the Circuit of the Americas, where we are just about to get ready for an hour of action on track. It's free practice 3, and after 2.5 hours of running yesterday, it was first advantage to Ferrari with Carlos Sainz and then Charles Leclerc setting the fastest times. But the good news, it looks like we could have a 3-team battle for pole position today for qualifying later on. And as for the race, well, the US Grand Prix always throws up something special, doesn't it? The sun is shining, there are blue skies, a few clouds whispering about, a little bit of a gusty breeze every now and then as well. Jack Nicholls, we're living the dream in America.
There's unlimited Mountain Dew in the media centre. That's what's getting me through the days.
Other drinks are also available.
Yeah, but it's literally not available in the UK because I think it contravenes EU health regulations because there's so much bad stuff in it. So you can't get it. I used to get it imported through a company in Manchester, but you can't even do that anymore. So to have that unlimited in the media centre, I am buzzing.
I'm so glad that it's the small things that tick the boxes for you. Jolyon Palmer, are you as easily pleased in your food and beverage choice?
No, I've also got the displeasure of sitting next to Jack, who's buzzing on Mountain Dew, so that balances out the great feeling of being here in Austin. It is nice. It's the second US Grand Prix of the season, and they're so different. And I've enjoyed Miami early in the year, but this just feels like a Silverstone weekend with an American twist. It's an old school racetrack, such a big crowd. I've never seen such a big crowd here. There's never been such a big crowd at Austin. The race is thriving, and I'm looking forward to it.
I think I said after Miami that Austin is like a Formula One race that happens in America, whereas Miami was like an American sporting event that happened to be an F1 race. That's the kind of difference in my mind.
I love the fact that on the way here, there's a few different ways to get to the Circuit of the Americas, but they're all jam-packed. There are coaches, there's cars, there's all sorts of manner of people coming to the Circuit of the Americas to, as you say, take part in a great sporting event. And hopefully today, they're going to be entertained. I mean, there's lots of talk about cost cap. I'm sure we'll get into that during the session if we want to. However, what actually goes on track at the moment, it's not about cost cap. It's about who can get out there, who can get a learning done in this next hour of running to give themselves the best shot at pole.
You love the traffic, though.
No. the feeling of being
clogging
part
up all the routes into the circuit.
Being part of a big event, Jolyon. It's cool, isn't it?
Yeah, it is cool. It is cool.
Build it and they will come, Palmer, and they have come.
And it's absolutely heaving today, and it is still the Saturday of the weekend. Okay, it matters because qualifying is a couple of hours away, 3 hours away, and we got this hour of practice first. But it's heaving already. It was busy enough yesterday. It is really great to see. And it should be close. It should be close from what we've seen. FP2 yesterday was a tyre test from Pirelli, so we didn't get a very good picture from it. We're taking our info from FP1, in which the top 3 teams were separated by less than half a second.
Lewis Hamilton just walking through to my right. Angela, his physio, holding his race shoes. Security here are a little feisty. They asked me to move out the way so that Lewis could come through. In fact, they cleared a whole little gangway for him, and he's got security on either side of him. Conversely, Max Verstappen just sort of slunk out of his Red Bull hospitality, found a hidden door, which is pretty cool, in the side of the Red Bull walling on the right-hand side of the paddock, and then, without much pomp and ceremony, walked straight into the paddock. Such contrasting characters, but I love it. It's all the razzle-dazzle of Formula One. Sessions about to get underway. We do have some power unit announcements incoming. We think Alonso's going to get a 5-place grid penalty. Leclerc as well, due another penalty this weekend, which could kind of put pay to him starting on pole position, I suppose. But let's see what happens. The clock is about 30 seconds in, so Jack Nicholls, a perfect opportunity to let people sync up.
Absolutely. Looking forward to this 1 hour because, as you say, we didn't really get a huge amount of learning yesterday, to be brutally honest. We saw both Ferraris top each session. Sainz in practice 1, Leclerc in practice 2, both did a 1 minute 36.8. Both were on the soft tyre, but we didn't really see a huge amount of quick running and representative running. So that will change today. as the cars pull out of the pit lane. Straight out goes the Aston Martin, and Leclerc is just about to pull out as well. Add some barbecue flavour, it says on the top of his helmet. Is that a sponsorship thing, or is that just what he's decided to put on top of his helmet? I can't quite work that out.
His advice to the restaurateurs of the world.
So what,
maybe
what Charles Leclerc is suggesting to Austin restaurants, put some barbecue on it, mate.
It could be. It could be. He's been out here since Monday, enjoying the flavours of Austin.
Yeah, lots of drive. Lewis Hamilton was at the LA versus Denver Broncos NFL match at the weekend. The Broncos lost. 59 minutes and 21 seconds. 20, 19, 18 seconds on the clock. It's the only NFL knowledge you're going to get from me. I just happen to be watching the match, so that's the only reason I've got that in my locker. As Vettel and Stroll are both out on circuit in the Aston Martins, Joe and Bottas for Alfa Romeo, Gasly in the Alfa Tauri, Perez in the Red Bull, Sainz in the Ferrari. Some news that came out this morning is that Logan Sargent, if he gets the required amount of super license points, will be racing for Williams next year. That is what Jost Capito said in the press conference a little bit earlier on. So, and we had a big old chat about Logan Sargent yesterday, but an American driver joining Formula One with a team that are hopefully on the up a little bit, and a kid with a solid enough resume.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on him?
I think he's got a solid enough resume, and that's about the extent of my thoughts. Because when he's sort of done fine in all this. He's not done a Leclerc or a Piastri and lit everything up, but he's always been, first, broadly speaking, rookie year, fine. Second year in the series, kind of in the championship contention. He was in championship contention with Piastri when they were racing together. So. Yeah, decent enough, deserves a shot in F1, in my opinion. Jenny Gow?
I think I find this strange, right? Everybody was talking about Colton Herta potentially joining and coming in, and wasn't it great that we could have an American coming to Formula One? Logan Sargent is a bona fide American, and yet there's not... okay, he might not be quite the same level as driver maybe as Colton, but I feel like we should get more excited about the fact that there is a decent American driver coming to Formula One to play the game. And look, we've got 3 races in America next year. It is clearly this is hallowed ground for Formula One. They want to break turf here, and I feel like they've done more than that. And an American driver is the cherry on the cake.
Well, I think the difference is, yeah, it's cool that there's an American driver coming in, but a rookie coming in at Williams is a little bit different to like a really exciting IndyCar racer coming in at Red Bull. So I think one has a bit more maybe pizzazz with Herta. But looking at junior Formula, honestly, you could argue that Herta and Sargent similar sort of vibes.
Do we particularly care about the nationality of drivers coming in? I know the Formula One teams do, because the business and the sponsorship, and we've now got 3 races in the States. So I love
a home hero. I love a home hero. I love Mexico City and everybody going nuts for Mexico City. I loved Perez. I loved Zandvoort and the atmosphere there for Max Verstappen. So actually, I think, yeah, it's tremendous. Andrew Benson, the BBC's chief F1 writer, is of course with us.
I think what's interesting is that for many, many years, it was perceived to be the case that Formula One couldn't break America.
Oh, this is interesting. This is interesting.
It had an American driver. Thank you. But now it's broken America, and it doesn't have an American driver, despite the fact it doesn't have an American driver. So, of course, an American driver is going to probably only increase interest. But I guess it just goes to show that if the spectacle is right and it's sold in the right way, and you can capture people's imaginations, then maybe the nationality of a driver doesn't matter too much. Of course, British fans, the majority of British fans are going to love Lewis Hamilton, and the majority of Dutch fans, as we've seen, love Max Verstappen, an overwhelming majority. But there are plenty of British people who love Charles Leclerc, for example, or Spanish people who love Lewis Hamilton as much as Fernando Alonso. So, I think both things are true.
Yeah, because it's not, broadly speaking, Formula One isn't as nationalistic, is that the right word, as something like a football or something like that.
Well, it's not a nations competition, is it? That's the whole point.
Yeah,
Football
correct.
Or rugby or whatever.
And I think, Palmer, you've said in the past, you wouldn't... I'm just trying to phrase this so it's not meant to come across offensively, but, like, I think you've said in the past, where's the effect of, you know, the national anthem on the podiums is kind of irrelevant. For because you're not racing for your country, you're racing for your team.
Yeah, but it's still nice. I was honoured to have the national anthem on the podium, but I think just because it's an impactful moment to be up there and hear your national anthem play out, you're not doing it for your country.
Yeah.
When you are doing it for yourself and your team, because, you know, when Lewis Hamilton wins the championship, Britain or the UK don't win Formula One. It's Hamilton winning the Formula One World Championship, whereas when England win the World Cup, if England ever win the World Cup again, then it's very much they do it for their country. And that's the difference with Formula One. It's similar with tennis.
Yeah.
With individual sports, you're not representing your country unless it's sort of Olympics.
Do they do a national anthem for tennis? When Federer wins Wimbledon, I don't think they do a national anthem, do they?
No. It's old tradition in Formula One, and I like it. It's a nice touch on the podium, hear your national anthem, and it's just a moment to be very proud of achieving a great result that I'm sure your compatriots could be happy with as well. But it's not why you go out there and do it. I think it's probably, I do agree, it's nice to have home heroes, though, across the board. Would we get excited if there was a Hungarian driver coming on to really spice up the Hungarian Grand Prix next year?
Budapest went nuts for Zolt Baumgartner. Actually, Budapest used to go wild for Norbert Michelitz. Was that his name? Norbert Michelitz?
In World Touring Cars.
In World Touring Cars, yeah.
Yeah. Sargent is he's had a good year in Formula 2. His first year, really, in Formula 2. Average qualifying about 5th, yeah. It's all right. He's won a couple of feature races. That's pretty good.
I'm impressed you've got average qualifying positions for Formula 2 drivers this year.
Andrew, I do the research across the board. Would you expect me to come on air and not know all the facts?
Mick Schumacher slowing as he comes out of the final corner. Leclerc and Verstappen have just come across the line to do their first timed laps, and they are basically separated by less than a tenth of a second. A 37.4 for Leclerc, a 37.5 for Verstappen. They're both now on cool-down laps before they go again. In fact, Leclerc has just returned to the pits, as has Verstappen. So they've done their first laps, and they have pretty much matched each other. Compared to the quickest time yesterday, which was a 36.8. So we're only 0.6 off the quickest lap time from yesterday. Schumacher's having an odd one here because he's going very slowly. Now he's up at the top of the hill and rolling down it, but he would have just gone past pit entry. So this problem must have happened literally into the final corner or something, and he's just cruising around, and he's going too slow for a straight line speed test, a constant speed test.
Okay. I can't box.
Yeah, understood. Just go slow for now and get feedback. Watch cars behind.
I can't box, says Schumacher. Presumably he said that because he's just gone past it.
Yeah, so he's got an issue. He's just gone past the pits, and then he's now slowing and doing a very, very trundling run back to the pits. Going to get a replay on board with Mick. Changing some settings on the steering wheel.
Oh, and then it basically dies coming through the final corner just as he passed pit lane entry. Kind of lost all drive, but he's managed to get some drive back now.
He changed gear as well as we were riding on board with him trundling back. So he should be able to get that back to the garage, I think. But for Haas, it's not good. They've already missed a load of mileage with Giovinazzi's crash in FP1 in the other really relevant session with the Pirelli tyre testing in FP2, not the tyres that we're going to run through the rest of it. So they could do with some more mileage for their two cars. Magnussen's out there on the mediums, and Schumacher is still circulating very slowly, trying to get back.
Sergio Perez has gone third quickest, a tenth away from Charles Leclerc, and then Carlos Sainz is fourth, but he's on the medium tyre, so he is a couple of tenths away, but on the medium compound tyre for Carlos Sainz. Esteban Ocon is fifth. George Russell has just jumped up into sixth place, 0.8 of a second away from Charles Leclerc, and then it is Bottas in seventh, Joe in eighth, and Magnussen ninth. Those are the 9 drivers to have set a lap time. Jenny Gow.
Yeah, Lewis Hamilton has just gone out on track. He just exits the pit lane. He's on a brand new set of soft tyres. And I can tell you what, the wind's whipping up down here again. I would suggest it's even stronger than yesterday at times. The flag, which is so tall just as you go down to turn 1, and I realise I'm standing in the way of George Russell when he's going to come in, so I'll move, is whipping around as well. It's a good gauge, actually, for the drivers. They can look up and really get an idea of what's going on with the wind and what they're going to experience in the cars. But I have to say, Phil Hill, as Mick Schumacher makes his way in, and actually that car doesn't sound horrific anymore. Maybe he's found a little bit of something. But yeah, Phil Hill looks absolutely resplendent. That's the banking on the right-hand side as you go up to turn 1. And there are thousands of fans standing or sitting in the grandstand there, watching on the track action. What a great place to watch Formula One. And the sun is shining down. It's just glorious, but so busy.
Yeah, producer Paddy and I were thinking of getting some food from Phil Hill in between FP and Quali, but it's going to be a long queue.
Should it be called Phil Hill Hill?
I don't like that name, Phil Hill. I mean,
you don't like Phil Hill?
No, I met Phil Hill. In fact, I had lunch with him once. He was a very nice chap.
Did you say I don't like your name?
No, I don't like that name for that thing.
You want to take that up with his parents?
Do you like Henman Hill?
That's different, isn't it?
Well, obviously, we know what we need to do to fix it. Make it just a quick 15 minutes and we'll get back out.
So Schumacher, they know what they need to do to fix it. Perez goes to the top of the times on a 37.338. Actually, also what I'll do before qualifying is find out all the official names, because if I look out the window, it did yesterday. Have they painted over it? Yesterday it said the Andretti out of the final corner on the tarmac runoff area out of turn 20, but it feels like I can't see it anymore. But I'm sure it was there yesterday, so I think maybe they've painted it over. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, Phil Hill. I like Phil Hill.
Yeah, he's got a nice ring to it.
In Formula E, they adapted the Nouvelle Chicane at Monaco, so I spent the whole weekend calling it the new Nouvelle Chicane, which I also amused myself with. Right, Perez is top of the times at the moment on that 37.338, but Verstappen and Leclerc are both pushing on this lap. Verstappen is 0.3 quicker than Leclerc in the first sector, and he's quicker in the second sector. So Leclerc comes through to do a 37.083. Verstappen comes around now, out across the line, and he goes quicker on a 36.706. So that's the fastest time of the weekend. 0.3 Verstappen's advantage over Charles Leclerc. Leclerc quickest in the final sector. Verstappen quicker in sectors 1 and 2. Verstappen now 0.6 ahead of Sergio Perez. They're both 0.9 ahead of Carlos Sainz, but he hasn't done a second lap, and he's on the medium tyre. Ocon 5th, Russell 6th. Bottas, Joe and Magnussen still the 9 drivers out there at the moment. Stu G says we should scrap the national anthems on the podium and use individual tunes for each team. So Red Bulls could be Hey Big Spender, for instance, which is nice and amusing. Well, Benson, we'll cover this off. We'll just get this out of the way. Cost cap, blah, blah, blah.
Cost cap, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we had a press conference this morning, which Christian Horner was in. He's not a happy man, as you can imagine, after Zach Brown, the McLaren chief executive's letter that we published on Monday, accusing saying what Red Bull had done was constituted cheating. Horner's accused their rivals of waging a concerted campaign for a draconian penalty against Red Bull for breaching the budget cap. They're still in talks with the FIA, Red Bull, and they say they want to get it resolved soon, but we don't know whether it's going to be.
Christian Horner spoke to Jenny Gow a little earlier on today, and he said this. Oh, producer Paddy. Are we ready yet? No? Should we? Let's hear from Christian Horner. Nah, I'm giving up. 46.
Well, look, we're in the process. I think we all want it concluded as quickly as we can. Otherwise it risks dragging on for months. And I don't think that's healthy for Formula One. It's not healthy for certainly our team. And it's a brand new set of regulations. There's always going to be a degree of subjectivity to it. And I'm hopeful that we can conclude it in the near future.
It's understandable that this is quite emotional as a subject for the whole of your team. What is the thing that's upsetting everybody the most as Red Bull?
I think what's most upsetting is that we really believe that we've, our relevant costs are compliant, and but I think beyond that has just been the accusations that have been made. It's been so disappointing from our competitors that have just been without any facts, any substance. There's been a degree of leakage that I've never seen anything like it. And when you get rival teams, writing open letters, accusing you of cheating, accusing you of being fraudulent, without any facts, any knowledge, in the world that we live in today, it's not right. And when I see the impact that it has on the members of the team, that quite frankly have worked their butts off, this year, and it's deep rooted, and in an age where we talk about mental health, this is having an absolute effect on some of our members of staff. And when I hear of members of staff's children being bullied in playgrounds, being accused of cheating and so on, that's not right. Because it feels like we're being tried by the media without, not a single fact has been placed on the table yet, either by the FIA or Red Bull.
I mean, so I'm suggesting it's not the media that's actually trying you, it's the paddock and the fans.
Yes, but unfortunately they're feeding you, and unfortunately we live in a world where everything is so instantaneously accessible, and there's the old adage, the higher you rise, the sharper the knives, and in this sport, in this paddock in particular, there's just a concerted effort to try and damage, the team, and that's what I find is unacceptable.
So my understanding is the admission of guilt is actually quite a contentious subject. It seems like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. You either take it further and risk more punishment, or you agree that you're guilty, which you've said you never wanted to do in the first place. So what is the option that is the best option for you and for Red Bull?
I think transparency. I think that we need to find a conclusion with the FIA. They're in the first year of a complicated set of regulations. I think they're doing the best that they can. Let's go through this process that are the rules, and I think there'll be many lessons on all sides to learn from it.
Thank you.
So that was Christian Horner speaking a little bit earlier on, and I mean, what I would suggest, Andrew, guilty until proven innocent is kind of how Red Bull feel they're being treated.
That's what he's saying, yeah. But they have been found guilty already. Let's bear that in mind.
Yeah.
The FIA have said they broke the cost cap, and it's just they're negotiating over. I don't know exactly what they're negotiating over, because it seems a slightly odd situation where the governing body of the sport, I mean, it is part of the financial regulations. Here's some radio from Leclerc.
Tyres, the softy's only there for one lap, but no ultra to improve that.
Copy, understood.
Leclerc saying the soft tyres are only there for one lap. While we were listening to Horner, by the way, Sainz jumped up into second place in the Ferrari on the medium tyre to a 1 minute 36.894. But yeah, so why don't the FIA just say the punishment?
Well, it's kind of part of the financial regulations. On the particular accusations that Horner's levelling to his rivals, and what he's referring to Zach Brown there, and also Toto Wolff, who was very angry about, Horner was very angry about an interview that Wolff gave in Singapore. I think I know Mercedes, for example, find that a bit hypocritical of Horner, given all the accusations he levelled at Mercedes in the course of last year about flexible rear wings and engine performance and all the rest of it. But it's at the end of the day, that sort of stuff is all part of the sort of classic back and forth that you get in the political battles of Formula One, and of course the media get fed things by teams. That's our job to find that sort of stuff out. Yeah, that's the situation in a nutshell.
So I'm so bored of it, personally. Tom says this whole paddock squabbling is getting boring now. We just want to race, and this whole you're unacceptable. No, you're unacceptable. It should be just like let the FIA get on with it, and then
it wouldn't get as much airtime if the championship battle was intense and still going on this year.
Do you think?
It would
I'm
still.
not sure about
the
that.
meaning would still be. I think the meaning would still be there. It doesn't change the effect. But Verstappen's won the championship. It's the big storyline, isn't it? That this grey area is there. That's a breach of some sort by Red Bull. But if we could still talk about a championship, Leclerc crosses the line now, goes second, half the tenth behind Max Verstappen. then I think if we could still talk about the potential rivalry between Verstappen and Leclerc this year, it wouldn't get quite as many headlines, I think, the cost cap as it is.
The reason, here's some Ricciardo radio.
Okay, something's wrong with the brake pedal.
Copy.
So Ricciardo saying something's wrong with the brake pedal as he came down into turn 12 and is now slowly getting off the line and out of the way of everybody else. So we'll see if Ricciardo pits at the end of this lap.
So the reason this is such a big story is that the budget cap was only introduced last year. Last year's championship was incredibly close, as we know. It was decided in contentious circumstances at the final race of the year. And this year's championship is not close in terms of car performance. Red Bull have the best car in the field, at least in terms of race pace. Red Bull's rivals look at that and they say, if they've overspent by $2 million, say, that is about half of an annual development program. They will have benefited from that for last year and into this year with the design of this year's car. And it's, if assuming the FIA have got their sums right, they've broken the rules on that front, and their rivals think they've benefited from that. And if that's what the financial numbers are, some teams would contend that that's enough to make some more radio from Ricciardo.
Daniel, everything looks normal in data on brakes.
Okay, yeah.
Can you give any more information?
It feels like it's just like really stiff, like it's at the end of travel, and there's no bite.
Ricciardo reporting on his braking problems. He's now back in the garage.
So that's enough to make the difference between winning a championship or not when it's as close as it was last year, people would say. I spoke to someone very senior within Formula One this morning. This is just to give an impression of the strength of feeling about what's gone on with the budget cap and Red Bull. This person said that if it's proven that Red Bull were deliberately trying to hide extra spending, they should lose last year's championship. That's how seriously people take this within Formula One. That's why it's such a big story.
I never doubted that, to be clear. But that is the only story right now. Yeah. That's my point.
Yeah. 37 minutes and 50 seconds on the clock. Verstappen is back out on circuit on the set of softs that he's already done a couple of runs on. He's done a 36.706. As Jolyon said, 500ths quicker than Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, a 10th quicker than Sainz on the mediums. Perez is in 4th in the Red Bull, 5th is Alonso, and Ocon, his teammate, is 6th. Stroll is 7th, Russell 8th, Vettel 9th, Hamilton 10th. Bottas, Tsunoda, Norris, Albon and Ricciardo, the top 15. Magnussen, Zhou, Latifi, Gasly and Schumacher, the 20 drivers. Although having said that, Gasly and Schumacher haven't done a lap. We heard Schumacher's problems earlier on. Gasly must also have problems, I would suspect, although Tsunoda has only just done his first lap of the session, so maybe Gasly will be heading out soon. But no, he did an install lap, so we'll keep an eye on Gasly. Jenny.
Gasly has just rolled out of his garage. You spoke about it, and there he is going up the hill, taking the left-hand turn and back down a little bit as well. So he's now out for AlphaTauri. Just a note on the engine penalties. They are accruing. Fernando Alonso's taken another internal combustion engine, his 5th of the season, as has Charles Leclerc, so they'll both pick up penalties. Leclerc also using a 5th turbo charge of the season as well. Ferrari think they might have got some reliability and gremlins sorted for this upgrade, so they're taking the hit here to give them a bit more power, and they think that they can run that car a lot more aggressively without the reliability issues that they've faced so far this season when they've tried to turn the wick up. So that's potentially very positive for them.
What's a shame is they actually look pretty quick right now, Ferrari. Verstappen's at the top of the times, but Leclerc on the same tyre with a similar amount of laps is just half a tenth down, and Sainz, who then will lead the charge for them in qualifying later, is 1/10 down, but on the mediums. So it's looking pretty good right now for Ferrari to be right there on one lap pace with Max Verstappen as usual. Perez is 6/10 down on Verstappen, and Mercedes are yet to pop in a representative time. Russell comes through and improves on a soft tyre, but he's a second down on Verstappen. Hamilton is on an outlap, and he's only done one flyer so far.
Okay, so earlier this week it was announced that Circuit of the Americas are naming turn 20 the Andretti after Mario Andretti, and I'm sure I saw it on the tarmac in the runoff area yesterday, and now I feel like it's been painted over because I can't see it anymore.
Maybe it was painted in like a slippy paint, and the drivers all complained, and they had to remove it.
Or F1 are like, no, we don't want Andretti in Formula One still, so we'll scrub their name out. I saw Michael Andretti. In fact, both were here yesterday. Michael and Mario, I think, were wandering around yesterday.
I saw Mario this morning, yeah.
Oh, he's here as well again today?
I'd want a different corner, I think. I don't think if I'm Mario Andretti, American Formula One world champion, icon around these parts, I don't think the final corner
through the parabolica.
Yeah, but it's not the parabolica. It's a left-hander that you can get a bit of a slide on, as Fernando Alonso did massively yesterday. I think I'll go for maybe that quadruple apex right-hander.
So the multiple, so it would be the Palmers,
the Andrettis.
The Andrettis would be good.
And that would be very apt.
The Andrettis.
Well.
So just to be clear, the reason Mario Andretti is here today is he's driving, I can't remember what year McLaren, but it's quite a modern McLaren, doing a demo run in it after this session.
He did it at Laguna Seca, didn't he? He drove it at Laguna Seca last week, and he's pushing.
He's like 80-something, isn't he?
Yeah.
And Zach Brown's driving Lewis Hamilton's 2012 car as well.
Was it
at the same time?
It wasn't the Senna one, because Pato O'Ward drove the Senna one, didn't he?
It's one of the more recent ones, I think.
Okay.
I think he still drives the IndyCar two-seater.
Yeah.
Mario Andretti. And apparently gives it the beans when he gets in that as well with a passenger.
Didn't he drive the IndyCar two-seater like through a city or something? I'm pretty sure I saw that once. Or I might have been watching Driven. I can't recall, but I'm pretty sure that happened.
Hamilton's on a lap finally in the Mercedes, comes through turn 19 in towards Andretti.
The Andretti.
Out of the Andretti, here comes Hamilton now. Can open the DRS, drive to the line, he goes to the top of the times. There we go, bit of pace for Mercedes.
But Perez has done the fastest middle sector of anyone. Pierre Gasly jumps up into 10th place. Perez is now coming into the Palmers, and then into the left-hander. Obviously, I can't name it that. And then the final left-hander at the Andretti, out across the line, and Perez goes quicker than Hamilton. At 1 minute 36.578. This is getting interesting. Jenny Gow.
Yeah, just down at McLaren, they're working furiously on Daniel Ricciardo's car. He was reporting a problem with the brake pedal, so they've taken off the pedal shield and they're just having a look. Hands down that little pocket that they're trying to adjust it, but at the moment, he's stranded in the garage.
Nicholas Latifi in the Williams, just coming into turn 14, has had quite a big lock-up in the Williams. The front left locking as he came into that long left-hander that tightens and tightens. So Perez quickest, Hamilton second to 10th behind, then Verstappen and Leclerc. Those top four all separated by basically a quarter of a second. Sainz is fifth, only 0.3 away, but on the medium tyre still. Alonso is sixth, Vettel is seventh, Ocon is eighth, Stroll is ninth, Russell is 10th and in the pits. So we'll see what Russell does. Verstappen, meanwhile, has just done two 1 minute 42 sevens in a row, so I think he's doing a bit of a long run now, Max Verstappen. Outside the top 10 you've got Gasly in 11th, Bottas 12th, Tsunoda 13th, Norris 14th, Albon 15th, Ricciardo, Latifi, Magnussen and Joe, the 19 drivers to assess the lap time. Still no time yet for Schumacher, but this is a very interesting session, this. I'm enjoying this.
It's changing all the time, isn't it? The soft tyres play for everyone apart from Carlos Sainz and the two Haas cars. Schumacher still hasn't done anything since coming in for that issue. We heard it was going to be 15 minutes. That should be up about now, and Mick needs to get some laps in.
Jenny?
Yeah, just looking at Charles Leclerc, who's in the garage for Ferrari. He's still in the car. I can't help feeling a little bit disappointed that this weekend he'll have an engine penalty and he won't be starting on pole if he can set the fastest lap later on today. It feels like this was the one. This is one where we could have got all 6 of the drivers in the top 3 teams really going for it and battling it out and seeing what would happen, and feel like we're going to be denied that opportunity.
Yeah, potentially, although I'm still always just a bit sceptical about Mercedes, honestly. We see a lot of times you go, oh, maybe they're in the mix, and then it's not that often.
But then sometimes they are.
Sometimes they are.
Like this.
True.
The races that they had a decent run, they could have won in Zandvoort, they could have won at Silverstone, tracks with long fast corners akin to this one. And they were quite good in Paul Ricard.
And
Budapest.
both drivers were quite optimistic yesterday after practice. I mean, they weren't predicting they were going to be on pole position, obviously, but they did feel they were going to be sort of not too far behind there or thereabouts.
The crucial thing is going to be, can they qualify to get themselves in the mix? Because the race pace on all those ones I just listed is what brought them towards winning contention. But if they'd started from the front, okay, Russell did in Hungary, but it was Hamilton that was a bit quicker, starting from further back. If they could start in and amongst the Verstappens, they'll be obviously ahead of Leclerc, which will be a big boost for Hamilton and Russell. And then if they can start ahead of Perez as well, then they're right in the mix. And if their race pace is better than their qualifying pace like usual, Mercedes think this should be their best chance of winning probably for the rest of the season, and surely it will be. Jenny?
Yeah, I spoke to one of the senior personnel at Mercedes as we were getting ready for this session. I said, how are you feeling? How's it going? He's like, yeah, feel pretty good. Yesterday was a good day. Let's just see how this car is going to disappoint us today. And there was a touch of irony. You know, they're quite light in what they say sometimes in Mercedes, which I appreciate. However, there is a real feeling of opportunity this weekend. They really want to capitalise on it. And if you look at race, how a team delivers a race, Mercedes is still one of the best. I mean, they're good at it, aren't they? When it comes to Ferrari, you know there's a mistake lurking around the corner. You don't have that same worry for Mercedes most of the time.
I think they did probably not perfect Zandvoort, and I think they could have won that if they had have done with what we've come used to from Mercedes, from having that the years of championship domination and not putting many feet wrong. But they probably could have optimised it for a win in Zandvoort if they'd called the strategy right there. But generally, Ferrari are the team this year that are known for their strategy gaffes or mistakes in bizarre circumstances. Red Bull have been really strong overall. Verstappen had a bit of a shocker in Singapore qualifying, but their strategy's good, their pit stops are good, the driver is exceptional. Mercedes are the team that procedurally can match Red Bull. And of course, Perez has got a grid penalty as well. So they don't even need to out-qualify Perez. They've got to qualify close to Perez, close to Leclerc, which they should have the car pace to do. Can they then beat Sainz? Can they beat Verstappen in qualifying? And then they're starting at the front.
I think the two races I've missed this year were probably Mercedes' strongest two in Silverstone and Hungary. So I think that's why in my head, they're always going to disappoint, because I wasn't there for the two that they actually did great in. 27 minutes and 50 seconds on the clock. Andrew Benson, what were you doing 16 years ago today?
I don't know. Why are you asking me that?
Fernando Alonso's second World Championship title. 16 years ago today. Here's Ricardo's radio.
Daniel, can you confirm you're happy with the brakes?
Yeah, I think it feels okay now.
Good.
Ricardo happy and out and about.
In which case I was watching that Grand Prix and writing about it.
Yeah.
Where was the party?
I don't know, because I wasn't there. I was in broadcasting house, not broadcasting house. What was it? What did it used to be called? Television Centre.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
16 years.
Brazil.
Since his second world title. Well, since his last world title. It's madness. I know we speak about Alonso, and we had a big old chat about him yesterday, but the 16 years today is... Crikey.
That's a barren spell, isn't it?
Isn't it just?
He's having a really good year, but an unlucky year overall, Fernando Alonso.
He said it was one of his best years this year.
Of course he did.
Yeah,
But every
always
race,
says
every
that,
race
yeah,
is one of his
exactly.
best races ever.
Yeah.
It's actually looking at objectively at the stats. He's been really fast. He's been pretty consistent. He's ahead of Ocon, but yet he's behind on the points because he has been extremely unlucky with reliability, with I think a couple of poor pit stops as well.
Hamilton at Spa.
Yeah, there's been a lot of things that have just been going against him. And so he may well be outscored by Ocon this year, but it just doesn't tell the picture at all of what's been a really solid performance. He's done the penalties he's copped a couple of times have been a little bit of a tough spot for him. The Montreal, he lost a few points because he was weaving and blocking Bottas on the final lap. Miami, he cut the chicane a couple of times. Suzuka, last time he got away with an absolute blatant cut of the chicane to come in for the pits off his wet tyres and saved about 3 seconds. There's always something with Fernando Alonso's race, but his actual raw performance is still there.
What is the record, I wonder, between World Championship titles? Who has that?
I think it's Niki Lauda, if I'm right, if I remember rightly.
What, from
77 to 84? Yeah. Alonso's not going to break it because he's not going to win another title, is he?
Right, whilst everyone's mostly in the pits, you're hearing Fernando Alonso on an outlap. He's about to wind something up on a soft tyre. Most of the front guys are in the pits. We're in a year now of Verstappen winning a second title, which follows a run of titles for Hamilton, 6 with a Rosberg Mercedes title in there as well, which follows 4 for Vettel in a Red Bull. And the feeling is that Red Bull, they could go on and make this another sequence. Why is this happening more now and not in the past, where you would get some, but they'd always be broken up with other drivers? It was rare to have just the blocks that we're having. Vettel 4, bam. Then Hamilton 6 with a Rosberg 1 for Mercedes in there as well.
Were there? My question is this, Andrew: were there regulation changes more in the past? So, because I remember in 2002 and 3 and 4, it felt like always something quite major was changing, and McLaren would build a new car every year, and you wouldn't get new cars until the 4th race of the season or something. You'd start with last year's car, and all of that would be unfathomable today. I mean, Haas raced a year with the old car a couple of years ago, but broadly speaking, it's just a constant development these days, where it felt like it was a new car all the time in the past.
I think you were talking about this yesterday, Jolyon, and I think you nailed, or collectively yesterday, you two nailed what the answer is. And this is only speculation because I don't know for sure what the answer is. One of you said that Formula 1's so perfect these days. That was you, Jack. Yes. And they're so good at maximising everything. And the other thing is that I think it was you, Jolyon, was talking about changes of regulations and people nailing the change of regulations when they come. And that's I think both of those things happened in all those scenarios you're talking about. The regulations changed for 2009. Okay, there was the Brawn thing with the double diffuser, but fundamentally, Red Bull nailed those 2009 regulations better than anyone else. And then exhaust blowing as well carried that on. Then Mercedes nailed the hybrid regulations, and then now Red Bull have nailed these new ground effect regulations. And once you've got that advantage, because everybody's so good at getting the maximum amount of things, you keep that advantage because you've got the advantage. So you're building on that advantage year by year as you design your car. Yes, things get closer, but it's really hard to close that gap. And you don't get the uncertainty of results that you used to get in Formula 1 in the past with reliability and so on. And now you've got the budget cap, which ironically was set up to try and bring the field closer together. But here's some radio from Carlos Sainz.
But this Charles up back some soft. Charles has an issue, he's not running on high fuel.
Charles has an issue, he's not running on high fuel, I think was the message. Sainz was asking for the long run comparison with Leclerc, but Leclerc's still in the pits and helmet off and not going out.
No, most others I think are on long runs now. Fernando Alonso was on a lap on softs, but it was leery as anything, and also quite slow.
So yeah, just to finish the point, the budget cap was meant to bring everybody closer together. It hasn't done that. It's made no difference to the field spread. And as Jost Capito, the Williams team principal, was saying in the news conference this morning, actually, now there's a budget cap, it's theoretically, actually harder to close the gap because you can't outspend anybody. Everyone's got the same resources. Well, they haven't actually. The top teams have still got more resources because they had the better resources before and they've still got them, even though they're operating on the same maximum amount of money. So it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out over the next few years. The thing that could make the difference is the aerodynamic research restrictions sliding scale, where the team who performs best in one championship gets the least amount of permitted aerodynamic research the following year. We'll have to see how that pans out over the next few years.
I'm excited by that, though. I think that has a real chance of being good and interesting and working. We'll see.
Russell just tried to get a soft tyre lap in as well and had a huge snap coming out of turn 1, so he's backed off. That's the sound you can hear there, George getting off. This is the sound on board with him coming into turn 1. Missed the apex a little bit, and he's out wide and just too hard on the throttle with some steering input in. I bring another point in.
Hamilton's on a really quick lap, by the way, so bring your point in, but just to be aware of that.
Yep. Personal best first sector for Hamilton, and pushing through the middle on the softs. Drivers don't change teams as much as they did. So when you have a dominant driver that finds the dominant team as the man you can hear now, Lewis Hamilton, has done at Mercedes, he's going to be a decade at Mercedes. Verstappen is going to be more than a decade at Red Bull with the contract that he's just signed.
Hamilton's backed off.
The soft tyres, that they are going away quite a lot on the rear end. A lot of drivers are sliding about. Still, the Red Bulls in the garage, Sainz out there on the mediums on a long run, and Leclerc going nowhere. Yeah, I think the drivers, there's nowhere near the change of teams that you used to have, which makes a big difference to the pecking order.
Well, is that because that is the pecking order? And we've said so many times in the past, well, you know, for a Ricciardo, he's not going to get a seat at Red Bull or Mercedes, so what's the point in racing anymore? Whereas in the 80s, you could go to Alpha and maybe you'd be winning next year. You could go to McLaren, maybe winning next year. Ferrari, Brabham, all of these teams, they could be winning next season.
Top teams have all learned the lesson of stability from Ferrari and Michael Schumacher in the 2000s. So that's why you've got the situation where Hamilton's locked in at Mercedes and Verstappen's locked in at Red Bull and Leclerc's locked in at Ferrari.
But Norris is locked in at McLaren. So
yeah, well, some people think that wasn't such a smart move for Norris, but
it doesn't. It looks like an interesting move for someone that might be one of the fastest drivers out there. Who is?
Who would have signed him? Because Mercedes are locked in with Hamilton and Red Bull are locked in.
Red Bull were interested in him for sure to go alongside Verstappen.
And why would Mercedes not be interested in Norris, as and when Hamilton calls it a day? May not be for a number of years, but to lock in for a really long time with McLaren, it was an odd decision, I think, for Lando, whose stock value is absolutely through the roof right now with the way that he's just basically taken Daniel Ricciardo out of Formula One before he was thought to be ready for it. I just find it's one of those things where you look at the past and you think Schumacher was champion with Benetton, left Benetton to go to Ferrari whilst he was winning, and then that gave the Williams a couple of years to come in whilst Schumacher was building the Ferrari project. Alonso was champion with Renault and then went to McLaren whilst he was winning the championship, signed for McLaren whilst he was doing that. Ferrari had Michael Schumacher leading the team, went straight for Kimi Raikkonen. Now, once you've got a winning thing, there's just so much hesitancy to change the thing that you're onto.
Russell's coming through the final couple of corners. He's on a better lap this time after backing off previously. Comes through the Andretti, out across the line, and Russell goes 6th quickest, 4 tenths away from Sergio Perez. Those tyres are across the line. He comes. They're fairly new, actually. That was his first run, apart from the one that he abandoned on that previous lap. So they were new tyres for Russell. I don't need to get bogged down in this. We're going to go to Jenny in the pit lane, I promise. But Berger and Alesi must have been buzzing in '96 to be leaving Ferrari to join Benetton, who have just won the last 2 world championships. They must have been buzzing. And then, well, they got a couple of wins. I don't think they won in '96. I think there was 1 win for Berger, maybe 2 in '97. They must have been out of their minds with excitement. They were going to win championships. Nothing happened. Jenny, get out.
Thank you so much. I patiently waited. I've just done a little tour of the pit lane as well. So Schumacher, he was having issues earlier, wasn't he? What were the issues? Well, they're having to replace his ERS water pump and an electric control unit down there. Lando Norris, he's had issues as well. They've done a total reset, it looks like, on the front end suspension. They're just putting the covers back on the tyres at the moment, so it looks like he'll be heading out relatively soon. And then if I make my way up to Ferrari, Carlos Sainz just being pushed backwards into his garage. But on the other side, Charles Leclerc, number 16 car, is still in there, waiting to go out. It's been a very serene garage. He had his helmet propped up on the front of the car, but it looks like they've decided that soon is the time for action and they'll send him out. Remember, he has grid penalties because of 2 different bits of the power unit that is being replaced this weekend.
Hamilton's on another quick lap. Albon's just jumped up into 12th.
Heikki Kovalainen joined Renault to replace Fernando Alonso as a rookie. The 2007 rookie fairy tale was Hamilton, who you can hear now on a flying lap, in towards turn 11. A little bit deep, but he is on a belter at the moment. Fastest first sector, but he has lost a bit of time again in the hairpin. 2007 was all about Hamilton, the rookie, at McLaren. Kovalainen was jumping into the champions' seat.
Alongside who? Fisichella was
Fisichella stayed.
No wins?
He had a podium in Fuji, was the standout for Kovalainen.
1 Grand Prix win, I think, in
Hungary.
Whoa, big moment for Hamilton through turn 19, and as a result, well, I think he thought about going back to the pits, but then was a little bit too late to get back across. But Hamilton does not improve on that lap. Lots of famous Finnish sports people, actually. 15 minutes and 18 seconds on the clock. Big moment there for Hamilton.
Yeah, there's so many drivers struggling with the rear. It's windy, the temperature's quite high as well, and new soft tyres for Hamilton. And he just got a bit wide into 19. Had a snap as he got out there as well. And the lap was already getting scruffy through the middle sector. And then the car just sort of bottomed out over the curb, over track limits. And he caught it, thought about coming into the pits, but stayed out there.
Huge shunt outside the media centre catering earlier on. One of the brollies got whipped up by the wind and was sent, what?
A parasol.
A parasol. 10 metres? Flying towards a group of people.
It was Mary Poppins without Mary Poppins, wasn't it?
Exactly. Quite remarkable stuff. Jenny Gow?
You can hear in the background Sergio Perez in the Red Bull heading out on a brand new set of soft tyres. Max Verstappen went out about a minute earlier, also on a set of brand new softs. So expect fast times are coming for the Red Bull boys.
14 minutes and 20 seconds to go. Bethany says, so in conclusion, we need to change the rules more, lower the spending, randomise the driver lineups and randomise engine failures, and then everyone will be great. Pretty much. That's about it. 14 minutes and 5 seconds to go.
We are off the back of the best season Formula One's ever seen.
So also, this will be a good season if Ferrari hadn't shot themselves in the foot so many times.
And if it wasn't 22 races. If it was 14 races, this would be a season for the ages.
Yeah. Bottas, 700ths down on Perez in the first sector. He's in the Alfa Romeo, and they are really struggling, I think, to keep hold of that 6th place in the championship. They're only 7 points clear of Aston Martin. They've scored 1 point since Canada of Alfa Romeo, which was a 10th place finish in Monza, I think, for Bottas, or was that might have been for Joe, actually, the 10th place in no, it was for Bottas, the 10th place in Monza. So they are in a very, very bleak run of form. Jenny?
Just to let you know, Mick Schumacher's managed to get back out on track in the Haas. Norris has also gone out as well, so good news for both of them. And I think Leclerc's just pulled out the garage too.
It was 10th for Joe in Monza. I should have trusted my instincts. But yeah, no points for Valtteri Bottas since Canada.
Aston Martin are looking good this weekend as well. Still quite quick through the first part of this FP3. The first 47-minute part. Vettel 8th, Stroll 10th, Bottas on board coming through 19, now into the Andretti, hooks up the apex nicely. This is looking a bit more planted at the rear end, slight correction as he jumps on the gas, goes 7th, 7/10ths down, new set of boots there for Bottas in the Alfa Romeo, but not a shabby lap time.
1/10 quicker than the Aston Martin of Sebastian Vettel, who hasn't run again yet.
I think there will be a little bit of a late flurry with so many cars still in the pits. It's been a long break between the first set of lap times. Perez still at the top, and then we're going to get another load coming in soon. Little quiz question for you.
Yep.
What's the longest run of different drivers' champions in Formula One?
Oh,
how many and when?
Wow.
Of consecutive different ones until you find a repeat winner.
Goodness me. But as in not back to back.
What consecutive?
Well, there's hardly any when you start to think about it, because you had Ascari winning 2, then you had Fangio winning 5.
I think 80s. I think 80 through 87.
No, because even then you had
who won
Piquet and then Piquet 2 years later, and then you had Prost. Lauda won within 2 years of each other. There's not many at all.
75 to 82. That's my guess.
No, because Lauda won the second one in 77.
No, but not consecutive though. That's the thing.
No, he said,
backs.
What's your rules? Because that's not a new champ.
How many different names in a row can you see on a list of champions?
I'm going. Yeah.
So Niki Lauda doesn't count as a different name if he's won it twice, does he?
No, but
you can take one of Lauda's championships, but as soon as you hit a second one, that's
so
the
you'd
end
have
of
to
the
start
row.
at 77.
So it's not in a row. This question makes no sense.
That might be the run. 77 through to 81 is only 4 years though. It's not very long. I don't think it's. Point is, I don't know what it is, but it's not a very long run.
It seems quite tricky out there.
Yeah, maybe pushing the braking zone a little bit too hard into turn 1.
Max Verstappen then is going a bit deep into turn 1 and has had to abandon the lap.
So I'll tell you now, there was 5 in 2006 onwards. Alonso, Raikkonen, Hamilton, Button, Vettel was 5, but you were both on the right track with 76.
Yeah.
James Hunt was the start of 7 different winners from 76.
So I think I got that right. I think I got that right.
7 different winners.
That's not really... You've broken your own rule there, because you've already had a Lauda the year before.
I know, but you had a Hunt win, then a Lauda win, and then an Andretti win in there. You had a Scheckter win, you had a Rosberg win.
Alan Jones
took a win.
Who won 81? Nelson Piquet?
Piquet.
That's when it stopped in 83.
Yeah. So I got that answer right. I think I got that answer right. I'm pretty proud of myself. 9 minutes and 51 seconds on the clock. Now, Verstappen is starting another flying lap here. Leclerc has gone out on a new set of tyres. He, for whatever reason, the team's saying can't do a long run, but he's doing another short run here. So is Max Verstappen. His personal best first sector. He's coming down now in towards turn 11. Jenny?
Yes, just in the pit lane, Lewis Hamilton's still waiting to go back out in the Mercedes. I think it shouldn't be too much longer, just doing a front wing dial change, so just changing the angle of that slightly. But I was just going to say the president of the FIA, Mohammed bin Sulayem, has just come into the pit lane to have a little look around. He's not really doing anything, he's just standing there a little bit far away from Mercedes.
That's a bold claim. We'll move on from that. Charles Leclerc has done a very quick first sector, much quicker than Max Verstappen, but Verstappen's middle sector is strong, so this is going to be pretty tight. Verstappen is now quicker than Leclerc, 2/3 of the way around the lap, as they come now through the long quadruple right-hander, then flicking it left at turn 19, and then into the Andretti, and Verstappen is going to go to the top of the times, but Leclerc, historically today and yesterday, has been quick in the final sector. A 36.223 for Max Verstappen. Leclerc now down through the gears, on the power again, coming out of 19, then into the Andretti, comes in front of the commentary box window and across the line, and Leclerc goes second. 100th slower than Verstappen. Not a personal best in the final sector, a bit scrappy out of the Andretti.
Very scrappy through the final 2 corners, was over track limits in turn 19, and then was fighting the rear of the car as well through turn 20. In fact, Verstappen's lap earlier on, everyone is struggling with the rear end. It's bumpy around this circuit, it's hot, it's 30 degrees air temperature out there, 40 degrees track temperature, and the soft tyres are really working, and then they're easily being overheated. So everyone's fighting oversteer. Verstappen was the same earlier on. Didn't look like the absolute tidiest of laps from him.
That is a very, very messy lap.
Yeah,
That's Leclerc's feedback. Wind speed currently showing at 5 meters per second, which is fairly gusty, fairly quick as well. Normally you're looking at, 1 or 2 meters per second.
Yeah, well, Parasol Gate was Verstappen's run over something as well, coming through the final corner, and then gone over track limits himself. But it is really windy. There's actually quite a lot of extra paraphernalia being blown onto the circuit. There was a carrier bag that was on there out of the Andretti earlier on. It's that sort of day where things are just being whipped up, and Formula One cars are not exempt.
Just to be clear about this Parasol saga, it didn't actually land on anybody, right?
Pretty much.
It was close.
It was close.
Okay.
It was they were fine. They were fine, but it was the talk of the 3 of us eating at catering at the time.
I've never seen anything quite like it.
I don't think I have either. And we've been around the block. 6 minutes and 41 seconds on the clock. Albon and Zhou are the only 2 drivers in the pit lane at the moment. And Verstappen is quickest, Leclerc second, Perez third, Hamilton fourth, Sainz fifth, Russell, Bottas, Alonso, Norris, Vettel, the top 10.
It was that much of an incident that we had to wind down all the rest of the parasols for fear it might happen again. Here goes Sainz on some soft tyres. He's run the mediums for a long time so far in this session. 6 minutes to go on some softs, feeling some grip. Look nice and neat coming out of turn 1.
Why is Zhou in the pits? Jenny?
He's only done 3 laps, I believe. They're investigating a cooling leak, which is taking its time, frustratingly for the team. They really need some clean weekends, and it's not going to be this one so far.
No, so frustration for Zhou. Sainz through the first sector, 400ths down on Max Verstappen, climbs up the crest of turn 9, then through the kink left-hander at turn 10, onto the brakes now, into turn 11. Real sort of whistly whine from that Ferrari engine, isn't there, as he gets on the brakes and now makes his way down the back straight with 5.5 minutes on the clock. Hamilton is just starting a lap now as well. Comes through the first sector, and compared to Charles Leclerc, he is 100th away in sector 1. So this is a reasonable lap here from Hamilton. He's 700ths up on Verstappen in the first sector. Sainz has lost a couple of tenths now by the time he's reached the middle sector, but this is his first running on the soft tyre, as Jolyon mentioned a little bit earlier on. He's coming into the long sequence of right-handers now. Daniel was hit by a flying parasol once. I hope you're okay. Through the right-hander comes Sainz. 2 more corners to go. Hamilton's middle sector will be coming in a moment. He might actually have backed off on this lap, Hamilton. Sainz out of the Andretti, across the line, and the Ferrari driver goes into 3rd place. Finds a lot of time in that final sector, the fastest final sector of anyone. Hamilton hasn't backed off. He's less than a tenth away from Verstappen after the first 2 sectors.
Yeah, still gunning for it is Hamilton. The sound you can hear now, fighting the car really hard into the to the tight left-hander at 15. Now he's coming through the quadruple apex, flat out on the gas down towards the final couple of corners. This is where he had a big slide earlier on. Planted through 19 down to the Andretti, the final corner. Just fighting the rear earlier on, but actually he's managed to hook up a nice final couple of corners, and he improves to go 4th. Personal best final sector for Hamilton, within 2 tenths of the pace. It's close out there. Verstappen at the top. Leclerc's just 100th down with a very, very messy lap of his own admission. Sainz, first lap on the soft is good, within half a tenth with the fastest final sector. And now Hamilton, 4th, within 2 tenths of the Mercedes.
Russell's the one not really hooking it up at the moment. 8 tenths away from Verstappen, and I don't think he's got a sort of run in. He did another run on a set of softs a few moments ago that only have had 7 laps on them. So we'll keep an eye out and see whether Russell goes out again on a new set of softs towards the end of the session. We haven't spoken about track limits this weekend because they're not deleting them in these practice sessions, but a lot of drivers have been doing track limits, haven't they? And that could be a thing in qualifying. Well, it will. I'm sure someone's going to get pinged in quali.
Yeah, it's been the norm now to not have them deleted in practice, but we do see them deleted then in qualifying. We saw it in Austria, in France, for even the most discreet of violations. So the driver's got to be a little bit careful about that. Vettel has done a lap in the Aston Martin and gone ahead of Bottas, whose time in the Alfa Romeo remains decent. 7th and 8th now for Vettel and Bottas. This is the sound of Daniel Ricciardo in the McLaren.
This is going to be a complicated question, I know, but Zak Brown said earlier on today, Andrew, we are at the top end of the cost cap now, and that's why earlier this year they were part of the whole Daniel Ricciardo goes very wide at turn 19, so this isn't going to be a great lap for the McLaren man, but he comes across the line and goes up into 15th place. But the questions will now start to, and you mentioned it a bit with the facilities, but if McLaren are now spending as much as Red Bull and Ferrari and Mercedes, they've got to be closer, haven't they?
Well, they obviously the aim is to be closer. The problem is that, as I was saying earlier with the facilities, the top teams have a head start because they had the sort of A-star facilities to start with. McLaren, they admit themselves, haven't got that. They've got a new wind tunnel coming on stream, for example, which is going to be ready sort of middle of next year, and only after they've got a new wind tunnel can they then hope to compete with the top teams, I think. That's certainly their belief. So it's still going to take a bit of time, which is why Norris locked himself into that long-term contract. Actually, I think, and again, this is also in the cost cap, in the context of the cost cap saga, just very briefly, to underline why people take it so seriously. McLaren, I think, are still now feeling the effects of 2007, the Spygate saga, the $100 million fine that they had. Everything that unravelled from McLaren unravelled from that point. Mercedes lost confidence in them. They lost investment. They found it harder to get sponsors. They were struggling for money. And then as we saw that decline that went on for the next 10 years, which they're only now beginning to come out of. So that's the sort of effect that falling foul of those sorts of things can have on a team.
I didn't realise the direct correlation there.
They nearly won the championship in 2010. They had maybe the fastest car in 2012. That's quite a long way, 5 years after the...
But the problems had already started. They'd lost Mercedes as the works partner. Mercedes had set up their own team by then, so they'd lost the benefit of that. And so all those things started to slowly drop away, and they were able to maintain it for a while. But obviously one of the reasons they didn't compete for the championship in 2012 was the car kept breaking, even though it was probably the fastest car. That was a consequence of this struggle for resources and so on, because of Mercedes' move to their own team. And then that carried on and by 2013 the effect was really starting to be felt. Then that was their first properly uncompetitive car, and they haven't had a fully competitive car since.
Verstappen has just gone to the top of the times, a 1 minute 35.825, 3 tenths quicker than Charles Leclerc. Leclerc improved on that last lap, but is slower than Verstappen. So Verstappen quicker than Leclerc by 3 tenths of a second. Sainz is third, 4 tenths back. Perez is fourth, Hamilton fifth. So Perez jumped up the order towards the end. The top 5 separated by half a second. Fernando Alonso has just been held up. I think that was by Perez in the Red Bull.
Sorry for that. He came quite fast. Had nowhere to go.
Perez apologising on the radio that Alonso arrived fast, but that's a last little flex at the last minute from Red Bull, isn't it?
There was a flurry of lap times. Alonso actually improved as well to go 6th ahead of Russell, who's had a tough session there, down in 7th and over a second off the pace. Not happy. Just as it was looking so close, Verstappen puts 3 tenths between himself and Leclerc, who's not going to be a factor in qualifying because of his engine penalty, where he might still qualify, but he's not going to be on pole. 4 tenths over Sainz. Perez also has a grid penalty, got up to 4th, half a second off his teammate though. Right at the end, Verstappen maybe just unleashing more potential out of that Red Bull.
So checkered flag out, Max Verstappen ends the session quickest. Pierre Gasly is finishing his lap, coming left through turn 19, then up to the Andretti, onto the brakes, down into the third gear, 60 miles an hour at the apex, out across the line, and Gasly goes into 10th position. So Verstappen fastest, a 35.8, 3 tenths ahead of Charles Leclerc, 4 tenths to Carlos Sainz, half a second to Sergio Perez in 4th, 5th is Hamilton, 6th is Fernando Alonso in the Alpine, ahead of George Russell in 7th, Vettel and Stroll 8th and 9th, Gasly 10th. Bottas, Norris, Ocon, Magnussen, Ricciardo, the top 15. Tsunoda, Albon, Latifi, Schumacher and Joe, the 20 drivers. Joe only getting 3 laps in.
Good stuff. So that is practice done and dusted here at Circuit of the Americas. And I've just come out of the pit lane into the paddock and got a proper bit of fever, because they've got the cars that Zach Brown and Mario Andretti are going to be getting into in a couple of minutes to do their demo laps. And it's Hamilton's actual chassis and car from when he won here in 2012. And, you know, the silver, the really spangly McLaren that they had that year is back. And it's beautiful. And then that's alongside the car that Andretti will drive, which is a much more modern version of the McLaren with the current colour scheme all over it. But, Jolyon, they're great cars, aren't they? Oh.
Yeah, really. What a privilege for them to take those cars out on Grand Prix Saturday around this circuit. That's a perk of the job, isn't it, for Zach Brown to jump into Hamilton's race winning 2012.
Does a lot of racing, doesn't he, Zach Brown? Does a lot of historic racing. Did he compete? Yeah. I think he competed in British GT. I think I might have commentated on him competing in British GT in 2011 for United Autosports.
I definitely interviewed him, Jack.
Yeah, I think that at Alton Park.
I was in the pit lane.
At Alton Park, Jen, I think. Yeah,
that's why if I was team principal or the boss of a Formula One team, I'd be thinking we need to do more PR activities, guys. I need to drive the cars more, and that's what we'll do.
What car would you drive? If you could drive any car from any era, Jolyon Palmer, what would it be?
Would I take... I think I'd maybe go for a Senna McLaren.
Yeah.
I think I'm going... Oh, I don't know, actually. The V12 McLaren Honda.
It's difficult to disagree with that. I like 70s F1 cars. They had a real bit of beef to them.
I'd also quite like to take Damon Hill's Williams out.
96.
Because that was the first time I grew up in Formula One, was watching in the mid-90s, and Hill as the British driver winning was cheering him on. That would be quite a cool thing.
How about the mid-90s Lola MasterCard?
Right, I'm stopping you there. We've got a minute until the end of the programme. Unfortunately, we've run out of time for that conversation. But you guys carrying it on.
What's yours,
Jenny? You guys carrying it on. Yeah, it would definitely... Oh, meh. I'm quite tempted by 77 Hunt. I'm quite tempted by that. Would that work for you or not?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah?
I don't know. I'm a bit out of a...
It's the year I was born, you see. And Hunt, legendary British driver, just goes together for me. Anyway, Max Verstappen just starting a practice grid run as he goes towards the top of the hill, and will he be able to get pole position later on today? That is the question.
Jordan 191,
sure
sorry, that's what I decided. Jordan 191.
Make sure you come back because we've got plenty more chit chat, and let's face it, that's what you tune in for. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live. Qualifying gets underway at 11 o'clock. We will speak to you then.